You're like right on time. Give me 1 second. This is delayed. Can you hear me? You're like right on time. Okay, I'm gonna mute. Give me 1 second. How are you today?
I'm good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fucking fantastic.
Did you start recording yet?
Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
I'm just entering some keywords just in case.
So fantastic sounds pretty good.
That it is. So it's on 2021. Let's see. All right, that's all I'm gonna do for right now. Yay, we're live. Awesome. You could hear it. Okay. This is awesome. I just love how this works. I have to not look over there because it's kind of confusing. I'm only gonna look at the chat. So what's up, DJ Ali V? Hey, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this installment of Quickie Wednesdays with Lupita. I'm Lupita V, and this is Mr. Blanco. So today I want to do this a little different. I have been really deepening my spiritual journey. And I don't like to do anything without meditation or just connecting to the light, which is what I call it. You can call it prayer, you can call it whatever you want, like a moment of just like mindfulness and quiet, whatever feels more comfortable to you. But before we get into the meditation, I'm going to do that before we get into the questions. I want to do introductions. So, Mr. Blanco, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mr. Blanco. As you have already seen me from, I guess, Instagram and on Lupita's previous videos, I am, excuse me, I have a background in psychology and counseling, and I focus more on the personal growth front. And within that growth, there's a lot of overlap in relationships. There's a lot of overlap in the personal growth. There's a lot of overlap in friendships, but mainly kind of dealing with the internal, right? Kind of dealing with focusing on growing from within, and then that growing without. So within, so without type of thing. Yeah, that's kind of my focus with what I work with and who I work with and what I tend to do with folks. And again, it kind of varies because everybody's different, right? So it always goes back to personal growth. It always goes back to the self-growth within, which helps people kind of overcome whatever obstacles they're currently facing or whatever obstacles they wish to be facing in the near future. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Where can they find you if they want to work with you?
You can definitely find me on Instagram. Mr. Blanco, Mr. Blanco 1 is my handle on Instagram. And you can find me through Lupita's page as well, because we're friends because Instagram, social media. And then you can also email me, Mr. Blanco 1, sorry, Mr. Blanco 001 at Gmail. So if you want to connect, if you want to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and kind of just go from there, shoot me an email or DM me through Instagram, and we can kind of just go from there too. Again, it's kind of wide open. The way that I try to talk to folks is it's an open floor, right? It's an open mic night. So you bring to the table whatever you want to bring to the table, and then we'll just go from there. So
yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. Is that a surfboard in the background?
it is.
Yeah, okay, I want to talk about that later. I'm Lupita V. I am a licensed psychotherapist, confidence coach, inspirational speaker, and DJ. Just in case you're coming across me for the first time, I teach people how to overcome some of their biggest insecurities that sometimes look like depression or anxiety, to smash some of their biggest goals and accomplishing ultimate success in all areas of their life. And I do this through motivation and encouragement and really tricking you into believing in yourself. So that's about me. I have a couple of announcements. I do have a singles group open over on Facebook. So if you're a single, and this is open to any gender, and any, oh my gosh, it's escaping my brain right now. Sexual orientation, whatever you identify with, this group is open for anyone, and anyone who's a single that is looking to connect with other people that value personal development, that value doing work on themselves. This is a place where you're not going to find people that are going to send dick pics and be drama. They're really about that life. They're really about finding and ready for love. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me. You can find me anywhere on social media under Lupita V Coaching. Same thing as the next announcement that I have. Mr. Blanco and I are doing a workshop together for a organization called Guias that Guias gives back to the community. So if you're interested in helping and maybe not interested in the workshop itself, this is still a great opportunity for you to give back. Maybe just donate to the organization. Our workshop is about aligning with love through healing. So maybe you're tired of attracting narcissists, cheaters, just people that are not ready for a relationship, things like that. This workshop will really help you zero in on what maybe could be the blocks and help you propel forward if that's what you're looking for. I'm really, really excited about this workshop. And this is my first time doing a workshop with Mr. Blanco, so you might not want to miss it. Who knows what's going to happen? Now, to the meditation. What I want to do is just what I'm going to do, and I can talk you through it, is I'm going to close my eyes. You can lower your gaze. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes or lower your gaze. And I'm just going to talk you through the meditation. And this is just really for me to connect to a higher source, to connect to the universe, so that whatever messages that are being received, I can communicate them to you and make sure that they're communicated in the best way so that you'd be able to understand them. This is about you and your questions and getting your questions answered. And so I want to make sure that I am doing my best to be of service to you. And in order to do that, I really love to just connect and have that my higher power just really help me believe in whatever it is that I'm talking about, to be able to communicate that with you today. I'm a little scary because this is the first time I'm doing this live, doing a live meditation. I have some pre-recorded, but yeah. Okay, let's just get to it. Let's just do it. Okay, so you want to sit down in a comfortable position. I like to have my palms up in my lap. I'm going to close my eyes, and we're going to take 3 deep breaths slowly. So there's going to be 3 seconds in between each inhale. So I'll walk you through it. Take a deep breath in, hold, and out. Another deep breath in and out. One more time, deep breath in and out. Now you want to keep your eyes closed and imagine the sun right outside wherever you are. The sun is in the sky and it's letting out rays, and one of its rays is touching the top of your head, touching the crown of your head. So go ahead and allow yourself to touch one of those rays. Let that light come into your body, down your spine, feeling the warmth, the love, connecting you with the sun, with the sky, going down your spine, throughout your ribs, through your rib cage, up into your heart, and then down again to your torso. Now your legs, shooting out your feet and into the planet. Going into the center of the planet and coming right back up into the sun again and back into you, circling. Now I want you to imagine yourself with this light, sending it out into the room that you're in. Now go farther into the building, now into the block, now into the city, state, country, Now this light is completely covering the earth in this beautiful light, and you're right outside of it, just watching and ready to connect with anything that's ready to connect with you. Now I want you to slowly bring yourself back into the room. Take a deep breath. Into your body. Opening your eyes slowly. Okay, I'm ready. That was good. So questions. We have got some interesting questions this time. Question number 1. Or you know what, Mr. Blanco? Why don't I let you pick? So there's categories of questions, of course, how we've been talking about the ads, right? Like money, love, dating, family, emotional, social emotional. Is there a question that you would like specifically from a category?
We can choose dating.
Okay, great. Why do I keep falling for narcissists or guys that are emotionally unavailable?
You want to tackle that one first? You want me to tackle it first? What do you want?
It's up to you. Do you want to go first?
I can go first. Usually, I think this goes back to a lot of the stuff that we've mentioned in the past, where when you view yourself repeating a pattern, it's the internal work that you're not really doing. The reason why we continue to go after X amount, or not X amount of people, but X type of people, is because there's something that we haven't really worked through with ourselves. So I know for myself, I kept on, in the past, I kept on going after specifically women that I thought I should save. I had that really bad hero complex. And in addition to that, it was fueled by insecurity. It was fueled by this anxious and avoidant attachment that I had. There was a, long story short, there was a lot of crap that I needed to deal with internally, that really, left unchecked, continued to push me towards unavailable women, unavailable partners. When I started working on my own stuff, that's when I started to like see, number one, respect myself and respect others around me, and number two, see those around me for who they really were, where they were really at, right? So if you're not able to check yourself and see yourself for who you are and be honest with yourself with where you're at, you're not going to be able to do that when you find somebody, because what you're going to end up doing is saying like, oh, that person's handsome or she's super pretty, that's enough. When we all know that that's not really enough. Because when you do the deeper work on yourself, you start working through those deeper layers of feelings, trauma, small t, big T trauma, whatever one. And you start really going to work on that stuff. And after you go to work on that stuff, you can see yourself for who you are and appreciate your good for the good that you have, for the good that you are, and start to pinpoint those things in others when you start seeking that out. But if you haven't, then you don't know what it looks like. You don't know what to prepare for, and you don't know what to seek out in a potential partner that can meet you where you're at.
Mm-hmm. So, so what is that? Can you give another example of like, coming from a male's perspective, like what is it that you know for sure, that you've heard, you know, that guys usually pick that type of woman, even though it never works out. It's never a good match. Other than looks, because it's not always looks, right?
Right. Okay. This is going to be hard for me to think on because a lot of the men that I know in my life typically are about the looks, right? They don't really, there's no other thing outside of looks that they seek out if they haven't done the work. So what I
Yeah.
mean by that is for somebody who hasn't done the work, they're automatically going to go for looks
Yeah.
consistently. So it's pretty difficult to kind of like pinpoint. It's kind of difficult to pinpoint, you
Let me
know,
jump in to help you out with it.
yeah,
In in my experience in the past, we're so attracted to like the whoosh, like the guy. He's not always the best looking, but he seems confident, right? And he's very passionate. He's very like in your face. Things move very quickly with them. They want to like make you their girlfriend right away. Boundaries are very blurred. um, and the the sex is fucking amazing, but you know that because you're doing it really soon. So as opposed to like, let's say if you give a chance to a guy that's respectful and is mindful of your boundaries and things like that, like you're not going to know how good he is in the bedroom that quickly, because you're not going there with him that quickly. With this other person, everything rises to the top, like everything heats up quickly, but it fizzles out quickly too, and there's lots of drama. Then the drama always leads to like the really hot sex. But there's no depth, like there's no allowing you to go deeper into I don't know, I guess for the lack of better words, like allowing to go deeper with like what makes them tick, what makes them do the things that they do. um you don't even really know how they are when they're not around you, because they're always around you. That's another thing too. And so if you come across a woman who is waiting to be in a relationship, this is beautiful, this is awesome, right? But what she's ignoring is how the boundaries are being crossed, how he's not being mindful and being respectful of that, how you're jumping into having sex with someone you don't really know yet, and now you're starting, there are connections, emotional connections that you think are being made, but they're not, because there's no depth within the relationship. And then there's just like all of this surface type level communication and surface type level connection. There's just nothing connecting on a deeper level, and that isn't just with the man, that's also with the woman as well. Like he's not talking about himself, and he's not getting really deep into it. She's not going over trauma or things that have really kept her back. And because he's not doing it, she's not doing it either. So they're both staying on the surface, and it stays really hot. It stays there. It stays really sexy. It stays really exciting and very passionate. But then there's nothing under that. And then because there's nothing under that, there's like a lack of trust. And I think what this person was talking about, guys that are emotionally unavailable, is that like there's no way to get to them in a deeper way. There's no way to connect with them on a deeper level. And a lot of times these guys, and I'm not going to say this is everyone, right? This is a generalization, but these guys that are emotionally unavailable, they're connecting in that way, like very, very teenager like. Like, yeah, let's have fun. Yeah, let's fuck all the time. Yeah, let's, like, let's go out and do all these awesome things. But then there's no trust, and there's no conversation where you're able to connect on a deeper level and make yourself vulnerable and be open to that, and allowing to learn each other, to be able to trust each other. I think that's what happens. Like, the reason why they fall for that all the time is because it just happens quickly, and they're so desperate. I'm sorry, it is what it is. They're so desperate to be loved. They're so desperate to be in a relationship. They don't want to wait it out and see what's going to manifest from all of this, like, heat and passion and like excitement. When someone who is respecting your boundaries can be exciting, can be fun, can be awesome, and you can learn how to trust each other too. No, yeah, that's how I was translating that question.
So there's a few things that I want to say to that. I think that's really important, and you hit it on the head a few times. I think, the heat, the passion, the really great sex, yes, that exists, and that can also exist in a deep relationship. I think what ends up keeping it from becoming deep is people are afraid to be vulnerable. So when you're afraid to be vulnerable and afraid to be deep with somebody who possibly can be, but you're not allowing that to happen, it's not going to get there. So I know from personal experience that, yes, with previous partners, we kept it shallow and it was great. And then it was great until it just stopped. And it also went deep with other partners, and it was still hot because we decided to trust each other. We decided to get vulnerable with each other, and we decided to blow through that initial sense of awkwardness, that initial sense of, oh my God, now you know me for who I am. Are you going to run away type of thing? So I think what it goes back to is, for that individual who's asking that question, it's like, okay, you can continue to look at the partner that's a narcissist and continuing to look at them like, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Okay, why are you choosing them in the first place? Why are you going after them in the first place? If you see that that's a pattern, and if you know that that's a pattern, are you going to blame them for repeating your pattern? No, you're going to work on yourself if you don't want to repeat the pattern. It all goes back to like checking yourself. And if you're not going to be vulnerable, and if you're not going to say, you know what, I don't want to have sex with you right now. I'd rather us talk for months. I'd rather us not engage in sex. I'd rather us not even fucking kiss. Okay, test them. And if they're willing, then they're going to be willing to stay and be with you, period. If they're not, then you have your answer. Really, that's about it. Because if you continue to pursue that, then really all you're doing is knowing that they're not going to meet your need, but you continue to go after them. So whose fault is it in at the end? And it's not really a fault thing. I want to take that back. It's not a fault thing. It's just, what are you going to do at that point? Because if you already see it, then you're either going to repeat it or you're not, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's that whole, like, when you're making yourself vulnerable, what it means to make yourself vulnerable is allowing a person or people to see you in a different way that you're not usually showing up as. And that is, like, when you need help, reaching out and saying that you need help. That's a perfect example of making yourself vulnerable. Or when you just need to talk about something, vent, let it out, and just have someone to be present for you. That is making yourself vulnerable, and not just like what happened at work, but something deep within you that you're afraid to share with another person. Vulnerability has to do with feeling that fear and fucking doing it anyway. And I really like what you said about, like, so if you're recognizing the pattern, what are you doing about it? I was having this conversation with a client recently when there was just things happening with a previous partner over and over again. Like, okay, we're just going to use this as an example. I'm not calling your previous partner a snake, but just for as an example, what you're telling me is that every time you walk into a snake pit, the snake bites you and you get mad that it bites you. So you're getting upset at the snake for being a snake. Why are you walking into the snake pit? Let's talk about that, because we can't change the snake. The snake will always be a snake, but you can change something about your behavior. So why are you going where you know you're gonna get bit? So stop fucking going there. Go somewhere else. You know, but if you walk into a lion's den, don't get mad that you know this is what we're talking about with, like, really checking yourself and recognizing if I saw this on an Instagram video too, where a woman was saying, like, she was crying and she was like, oh my God, like, I really want to stop attracting these narcissists. They're just like, I don't know what to do. And I don't know why they keep on, you know, like, how do I protect myself? And the guy who's kind of like a coach, he was like, listen, honey, you don't have to date alone. You don't have to date alone. You can have this, you know, do a double date. You can have him meet your friends and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, ew, I don't know how I feel about that. Because if she has these toxic behaviors and she's not recognizing this within herself, a lot of times the friends that we have around us reflect us. And so they're in the same place too. And even if it's something we don't want to hear, we're not going to listen to it. We're going to listen to the ones we want to hear. Like, tell me that this guy is awesome. That's what my radar is out looking for. And if my girl over here is telling me that this guy is bad for me, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to the ones that say, like, oh, he's awesome. He's so passionate. He likes you so much, girl. And just things like that. So I think it really boils down to, like, checking yourself. And what is it that's making you settle for this type of person? Because if you keep on getting hurt, then that's not okay. And this person is not good for you. Why are you settling? Right? Like, why are you thinking that you're not worthy for something more? Yeah, that's what I got when when I saw that video. And she's like, oh, please help me, I need protection. I'm just like,
I want to add something to that. I think the one thing that a lot of people don't realize, including myself, I mean, everybody, I would say everybody, until they actually get to that point of realizing it, there's a lot of help that they're going to need, whether it's from a coach or a therapist or whatever. They're going to repeat those patterns until somebody else who loves them enough to tell them, what the hell are you doing? Look at this. This is why XYZ. Then they might get it at that point. But until then, it's just a loop that they're repeating that they don't know that they're repeating. And again, a lot of these cycles, a lot of these patterns, they come from our childhood. They come from what we see in relationships with their parents, what we see in relationships when we're kids, and what we deem as normal. So we grow up and we do the same thing because we see that as normal, and then normal becomes comfortable, right? So the unfamiliar is uncomfortable. So when you start getting into that unfamiliar territory, changing your patterns, it gets really uncomfortable. It starts to, like, just eat at you. It starts to cause some anxiety. You don't like it because it's changed. It's unfamiliar. And when you start to get into it, it starts to become very uneasy, right? But again, it's, you know, nobody ever said change was easy, and nobody ever said that growing pains, like just that phrase alone, there is pain with it, you know? And then to the part of you mentioning the double dating and stuff, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, and he was mentioning, and he's on the dating apps, and he said there's this girl that he found on the app that said, you know what, if my friends don't like you, then yada yada yada. Now it's funny because we were having a conversation about that, and I think it could go both ways. I think it could go in one way where it's like, yes, your friends do reflect where you are right now, um, and it could be perpetuating the cycle of really bad decision making, or um, you could have a friend that's just like, um, don't you see this, or don't you, like, why are you doing this, like, why do you continue? So I think it could go both ways. It just depends on your friends. um but then again, that's really just another that's another topic entirely.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really great point. I love how that wasn't even on purpose. With having a coach or a therapist, you know, having someone really there to be objective and to be able to bounce these things off of them, and having that that accountability and that support that's needed if they're going through something like this. Because I can't speak for many, excuse me, I can't speak for many therapists, but for me as a coach, if I had a client that was experiencing something like this, my initial response would be, let's talk about why you feel like this is the best match for you, or why is this alluring to you? Why is this so attractive to you? And really making sure that the connection is like emotionally unstable, not ready. Emotionally unstable, meaning not ready. And it's going to take me to a place where I probably don't want to go. And also, too, like, if I'm attracting people that are emotionally unstable, does that mean that I'm emotionally unstable? Let me ask these questions of myself to see where that goes. You know, journal about it, meditate on it, and then talk about it with the coach or the therapist to really understand what that means, and what you can work on to make sure that you're not continuing to attract these people. Because a person that is not attracting narcissists, it's not that they're not attracting them. It's not that they see the red flags right away and then it doesn't become a thing. They just pivot and go in a different direction. That's it. Or maybe they'll be a little, you know, seduced by it, or it'll be appealing to them for a little bit, and then after a while it'll click for them, and they'll be in this place of like, yeah, no, not for me, I'm gonna go this way. So it's just really zeroing in on what makes them so attracted to this, and identifying that childhood trauma. Why is that so attractive to them? I really agree. Let's go to the next question because we're already running out of time. That was fast. Gosh. My parent doesn't believe my depression is real. Can you help me explain it to them? And this is from an adult person.
There's a few things that pop up with that. My right away, my go-to question is going to be, this is going to sound pretty rough. If they already don't believe it, okay, why are you pushing it? Why are you pushing for them to know it? To me, that's kind of like, you see, like, you're already experiencing whatever you're experiencing with the depression or the anxiety or whatever, right? And if whoever, whether it's your mom, dad, partner, they don't believe it, they don't see it, they don't agree with you, whatever the case is, okay, let them have that, let them be there, what are you going to do to continue to work on yourself? Because it's going to be kind of like you're adding an extra fight, you're adding an extra battle, you're adding extra work to do on your end to try to convince somebody else that you have XYZ. Whereas you could just be working on XYZ and like having that be the main focus of your attention. I know, like I've spoken to a few folks who recently, mom, right, their mothers have been a major issue in like their communication, their life, their mental health. And it always just goes back to, okay, but are you trying to help them or are you trying to help yourself? Like, are you trying to help them understand or are you trying to help yourself with what you're dealing with? Because as of right now, from my understanding, what's most important is your mental health, not their understanding of your mental health. In addition to that, you cannot control whatever they feel, think, or believe. So let them feel, think, or believe whatever they want to. Because no matter what you do, you're only going to be adding more hardship to yourself the more you try to bestow whatever you have or bestow whatever you know, whatever you believe onto somebody else. It's going to be a losing battle, to be quite honest. And even if you get them to actually finally understand, all of that time, all of that energy spent on that direction, you could have just kind of made it a little bit more efficient for your sake, for your health, for your mental and emotional well-being. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, I think this person lives with their parents, and some of the context was like, the reason why you're feeling this way is because you're not doing anything. So go and do something. Like, depression isn't real. So if you just like do stuff, then you'll feel better. And the person, the adult child, was like, it's hard for me to do stuff. Like it's hard for me to get out of bed. It's hard for me to feel like I want to be here. And the parents were like, we had those moments, we had those moments all the time, but we still made it through. We worked through it. So if we're fine, you'll be fine too.
I would say, given that, if this is an adult person, find somebody to help you. Again, therapist, coach, whatever the case is, find somebody to get on your side to help you through your stuff while also trying to assist you in, if you still want to go in that direction and explaining it to your folks. Because I think as of this point, if your folks aren't going to believe you, they're not going to believe you, period. Probably because you're their kid and they're your parents and they're not going to believe you. Maybe bring somebody else in from the outside, a professional, whatever other help that you can bring in to like show them maybe where you're at. But I think if they already have the mindset of not believing you, then they have the mindset of not believing you. And I will just go back to my original statement, which is you're going to be trying to convince somebody who doesn't believe you. So in that case, try to seek professional help. And then from that point, see how they, if you're willing, whatever plan you can come up with them, if you still want to try to talk to your parents about it, go that route. I know from my personal experience, going to therapy, and from other people's personal experience, speaking to my folks and those people speaking to their folks, they get nowhere. No matter where they are in their therapeutic experience, whether it's day 1 or year 3. No matter what, it's just one of those things where you're not going to be able to convince or show somebody else anything. You just have to kind of do it on your own. But yeah, if your goal is to see what you can do in terms of your parents kind of getting it, bring somebody else to the table if they're not getting it from you. Because if they're not getting it from you, again, that's, in my perspective, from my opinion, you're their kid, they're your parent. They're always going to know better than you. Like, that's That's something that I've come across consistently. I don't know. What do you have to say to that?
I don't know what is wrong with my throat today. Um, what I agree. The only way that that is going to be remedied is by involving a professional. So if you are feeling depressed or anxious and you're having trouble explaining that to people that you live with, only so that they can stop with, or their expectations can change, to help with the living situation, the best way to remedy that is by involving a professional. um, my experience working with Latinos, or people of color, they had these exact situations where, they lived with their parents and they were adults themselves, and their parents didn't believe that they had depression or anxiety. Um, after talking with them, after me talking with them, then all of a sudden they believed in depression. Then all of a sudden they understood what it was, how to respond when someone is feeling depressed. Then all of a sudden it made it okay for them to feel depressed as well. Um, because that takes a level of compassion. So if you're feeling this way and I have to show you compassion, oh, then you show me compassion when I'm feeling like that too. Oh, okay, so that's how it works. All right. Um, that's been my experience with that, with parents that have teens that experience depression. It's almost treated the same way. Well, no, that's not true. The parents, I'm sure you can attest to this, right? The parents are like, oh, you're fine, you're fine. You just need to do this. You just need to do that. Or their feelings are almost not validated because they're not adults yet, but they look older and they're bigger. They're not taken seriously, nor are they given the attention and the support that they need from their parents. Their parents are already connecting them to adulthood, but they're still kids. And so the parents are kind of like coming from a place of like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a kid. And at the same time, you need to take care of yourself. Where the teen really just wants to be held, really wants more support, really doesn't want to, or isn't feeling like they're ready to be an adult yet. And this could be due to childhood trauma having to do with the parent that's making them hurry up to grow up, right? So those situations are, approached a little differently than as for someone who is an adult trying to have this conversation with their parents and they're experiencing this. It really does take a level of understanding from the parent's perspective. If it's a teen, like, remember when you were 16, what was it that you wanted from your parents? What was it that you really needed? Okay, so put yourself in the same situation. How often were you misunderstood? How often were you not paid attention to or listened to or invalidated or acknowledged? And just having those types of conversations with putting themselves back, taking them back to when they were a teenager and really having them feel it, getting connected to those feelings and getting connected to the lack of validation and acknowledgement, with the teens. How is it, with you, with teenagers and those expressing, depression or depressive states or anxiety?
It's pretty difficult, especially in the Latino culture, because again, oh, depression, oh, you're just sad, or you're just like, a few parents do get it, a few parents do respect it, a few parents do want their kids to seek help, a few parents do seek help, um, but other parents not so much. And I think, again, in that scenario, if it's a teenager, not an adult, um, the best thing that can happen is, you know, the addition of other supports, whether it's in the school, whether it's friends who know of a therapist, or whatever really, to help the kid, to help the teen kind of build that knowledge base, build that strength, and find a connection with someone who is unconditionally there for them, with that type of unconditional love, and that unconditional support that's unbiased. That's difficult, obviously, because teens will either choose to go after that or not, because teens kind of know what they want and they know what they don't want. I'm experiencing more and more of the teens who kind of don't really want to go that route in terms of getting the help. And then there are some that do. So it really just fluctuates. I think another thing too, and I want to say this to what you said earlier with parents, a lot of parents can't connect to their inner child. A lot of parents will not be able to. A lot of parents will stand firm in that, oh no, it's fine. Well, I didn't need that when I was a kid. Okay. It's because they can't, you know, dig deep. It's because they cannot go within to really like release that pain. And that's probably some pain from like way back when. Like these are old school Latino parents, 50s, 60s, 70s, who are just like, yeah, I'm not gonna dip into that shit because that was some hardcore. Like my parents, and I love my parents to death, and other people that I've spoken to who are adults, of parents who have whatever issues that they have, okay, who don't really necessarily believe in the mental health side of things. One thing that I continue to say to folks is, and something that I've learned myself is, our parents, they had to grow up at one point. And when they were forced to grow up early, when they were forced to grow up when they were younger, at that point, they didn't necessarily develop, right? Like in that normal stage of development, they had to like push through that and just really omit and forego a lot of the normal processes of growing up. So they don't necessarily have that. So they can't really look back to that and say, oh yeah, when I was a kid, man, I no, because they didn't have it. And I think that's one thing that's really important too. And it goes back to my original thing. It's like if your parents are already not about it, not understanding, they don't want to understand, they're pretty verbally like, you're just being lazy, or you're just being tired, or you're just being like silly, get out of bed. They cannot relate. Even if a professional comes to them with whatever knowledge, they still cannot relate. They still cannot empathize. They still cannot like dig deep within themselves to like reach that part of them that's just like, oh my God, fuck, like you're right. They can't do that. And that's no fault of their own. It's just they were raised in their generation and that's what they've become. The nice thing is about future generations is now mental health is everywhere and emotional health is everywhere. And we can take that by the reins and we can learn from that and we can apply it to ourselves. But again, to go back and to try to like convince somebody who's like, they have generations on you, it's going to be pretty difficult. So,
oh man, yeah, I love that. That's such a great, that's a good point. Such a good point. And I want to end that with when they say like, oh, when I was younger, I didn't have depression and I'm fine. Depression didn't exist when I was younger, you know, and I'm fine. Like, but are you really? Are you though? Are you really though? Really quick, my son tells me this. He tells me this joke all the time whenever I say like, well, when I was younger, say like, I know, mom, I know when you were younger kids that you didn't even have a stomach, right? Or like, you know, that meme, like back in my day, we didn't even have stomachs. Anyway, so let's go on to the next question. So let me see. There's so many questions. We're not going to have time to get through all of them. Oh, here's a really great one. And I definitely want to talk about J-Lo before we go. Why can't I cry anymore? So I can go in first with that.
Go for it.
Yeah. There's not a lot of context with this question. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to assume that either they're trying to cry in a public place or they're trying to cry where there's people around. That's number one. Number two, they're probably equating crying with it being silly. And I think at the times that they're trying to cry, they're not making the connection of why they're crying. They're not going deep enough to allow the tears to come out. So they're just trying to cry just to cry because they know they need to cry, but not really thinking about the pain and whatever it is that they're trying to release. The whole point, the whole reason why they can't cry is because they cut off, they cut connection to that part of themselves that would cause for them to cry. So now they want to, and there's too much space in between. So whatever that looks like for them, maybe it was, of course, childhood trauma or whatever happened to them that was consistent in their life, and they cut that off so they no longer had to feel that pain, and now they can't cry. But since there's not a lot of context with that question, that's as far as I can go with that. What do you think about that?
I was going to say something similar. I think with the experiences that I've had with folks who don't cry, or it's really hard for them to cry, it's because a lot of them view it as a sign of weakness, and a lot of them view it as themselves being weak if they do.
Yes.
And it's a kind of it's a vulnerable, number one, it's a vulnerable act. And then when you get into crying, then you're like, why the fuck am I crying? I'm so weak, I'm so this, I'm so that. I know people like that I've had to speak with them and say, motherfucker, you're human, number one. Number two, like, why is it not okay to cry? I think that a lot of people,
yeah, you're not a freaking cyborg. Jeez.
yeah, a lot of people, I think they're so strong because they had to be strong, because they've gone through so many things in their life that crying doesn't really represent strength. Like in this modern world, crying does not represent strength. You do not see people who are like, well, let me try to rephrase that. You do not see a lot of emotional intelligence out there. So where you do find emotional intelligence, then you'll see people who are crying and embrace crying because they know that it's healing for the body and it's healing for the soul, the spirit, whatever. People who aren't into that lifestyle, that realm, they're not seeking that out, they're gonna not see crying anywhere. And when they do, they're gonna associate it with weakness, because it is associated with weakness. It's associated with being vulnerable and not being strong enough to get through whatever you need to get through. Yeah, I mean, with again, different people that I've spoken to, they view themselves as weak if they do cry. They don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to feel weak. They don't want to feel that vulnerability. And it's a lot of pain. It's really painful, especially if you have not cried in forever. When you start crying, feelings come up, memories come up, like all these triggers start getting activated, and then you catch yourself in a place where if you don't have the help professionally or with somebody there with you to carry you through it, you're like in limbo at that point. And then you're just like feelings, bawling, and you can't handle it, and you start to shake, you start to do whatever because you've held it in for so long. So it is a scary thing to engage in. And again, it just goes back to people not wanting to feel that. It is scary, it is painful, and again, it's associated with strength to not cry. I know that sounds very basic, but it's also very true. Even with the whole toxic masculinity thing, or toxic masculinities, or even like toxic femininity, whatever you want to call it, whoever's going to be crying, they're choosing to cry because they know that it's a release and they know that it's helpful. I know I have seen people start to cry and then they're like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I know there's one person, I love her to death. She would always say that she compartmentalizes stuff, which is good to a point, but then when it starts to affect your emotional and mental health, how many times can you compartmentalize shit until it bursts at the seams, really, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on her at all. We all have our ways to cope. We all have our ways to deal, but that only goes so far, because when it gets to that point where it's just not working anymore, we got to find a new way. And usually crying is not the way that we want to go. That's a really long answer, but that's kind of my answer for that.
No, I'm in complete agreement with that. You are on point with everything. Am I still on mute? No, right? Okay. Yeah, it is a sign of weakness. I don't think it's particular to the Latino community, Latinx community. I think it's with everyone. Like, it's unacceptable, like the whole like, oh, man up, you're fine, or are you gonna cry? Are you gonna cry from a broken heart? Are you gonna let him cry? Are you gonna let him get you like this? Are you gonna, dude, you're letting her get to you like this? Like, that's not what it's about. It's releasing the pain. It's releasing the shame, releasing the embarrassment, releasing whatever expectations were expected and not met. Just all of those things, and allowing yourself to have made mistakes, like you said, right? Allowing yourself to have emotions, to have this particular emotion and not have it repressed. I think when people don't cry and they push it down, it turns into something else. And we know that it doesn't turn into rainbows and unicorns, right? They're not going out and be like, tra la la la. They're not doing things like that. They're the people that are beating up people on the expressway or, stuff like that. It doesn't work. Not crying isn't helpful. It's not helpful. And releasing it is what it's necessary. I really believe it. Alfred Adler called it water power. Like that's what crying is. It's water power. You have to embrace the power in that and releasing. So I don't have a problem crying. I don't have a problem crying in public. I think like I'm kind of like the typical chick where like I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, I cry when I'm mad. But
there's three things that I want to say to that, right?
Yeah.
And I think with Adler's quote, I think this is very aligning with that. I heard this, I don't know who said it, but tears are the body's way to heal, right? It's basically like the body's way to heal the pain that it's going through. There are other exercises that one can do to heal, but like if you keep those tears in, like you said, you can see them be violent elsewhere or whatever, but it could also literally manifest into physical illnesses. Yes. Within the body. One, yes. Right there. So that's just like scary. Two, the one other thing that I wanted to say was like, and maybe this is not even relevant to this, but I know for me, this is a different topic entirely, but I know that there's that healthy crying when you like get into it and you allow yourself to cry, and then there's the crying for everything. Mm-hmm. I know I had a conversation with my sister last year, and we were having a conversation, and then I started crying, and then she looked at me like, and then that was just my own thing of having to like check myself with the consistent crying of what I was going through and blah, blah, blah. So I think there's also with that crying piece, there's again, totally irrelevant because this is not aligning with what we're trying to get at. But there's also like, it dips into that the masculine feminine energy that I've definitely worked on myself. And again, this is just a topic entirely different, but I know that I used to cry for every single thing. And I know that as a man, not many women are going to find that A, sexy, or B, like one of those things that are just like, oh, okay. It's pretty funny. I'm going to just use that word because I can't think of another one, where the man cries more than the woman in the relationship. I know I definitely used to be that, but that's something that I worked on myself. And I also know that there is a balance with it, right? Like, I know that when I need to cry because of some deep rooted pain that I need to release, that I need to heal from. And then there's also just like, okay, like it's sad, but you don't need to cry like a river over it.
Yeah.
I think in that there's a balance too. And I think the more people understand that there is a balance with so many things and the reason behind so many things, and where one thing is healthy whereas another thing is not, that's kind of where they'll start getting to a place of just betterment for themselves. And again, it's an internal check, right? Like, why am I not crying? Or why am I crying too much? Like, why is this happening? And then both answers could lead to something that's the same outcome, the same root cause, the same root trauma wound, or it could lead to just completely different things. Just going back to checking oneself and what's going on.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. I still cry, but I cry less than I did before. I mean, obviously, I'm not depressed anymore. I'm not feeling anxious in the ways that I was before and things like that. And I'm a lot more used to being happy. And that's why I cried less than I did before, because before I'm crying because I'm depressed or I'm going through a painful experience, right? But I would also cry when I was happy. And the reason why I was crying because I was happy is because I was happy less of the time and it was overwhelming for me. Now that I am used to being happy, I'm used to being in this different place, I'm crying less for that reason. Like I had like a moment for my birthday where I got surprise letters and things like that. And that was just so beautiful to me. And it was really touching. So I was crying. But I don't cry anymore when something really fucking amazing or super awesome happens, as opposed to before, because before was like so few and far in between. And now it's just like, it's a part of my life. Like, oh, when I'm happy, I don't cry. When I'm happy, I act happy. I smile. I hug people, or, like I just try to spread the positive vibes or whatever, right? And before, I was crying more often. I think it was too, I was used to doing it, so I had to come out of that and not be so used to doing it. And that's like for anything, right? You're so used to narcissist, you got to come away from it and figure out, make that connection to not continue to bring that into your life. You're so used to you're so used to crying, and you feel like that isn't going to be helpful for you in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like in the case that you're talking about, like, with romantic relationships and things like that, is really checking yourself and trying to figure out, where is this coming from and is it necessary? I mean, it's a kind of, there's no black or white for that, because I think it's important for a person to still be authentic, still be themselves, and at the same time to figure out what's going to work for them, what's going to help. Like, I don't know. I would ask, like, when you were 3, were you always crying all the time? Or were you the type of child that um, really let things go easily? I mean, at 3 years old, of course, a lot of children are crying a lot, but for the same reasons, like not getting what they want, or there's like an injury or something like that. But most of the time, they're not crying. Most of the time, they're pretty content with where their life is until there's trauma or something like that. So yeah, I'm going off on a tangent. Let me stay here. Let's go to one more question, and then we're gonna go to talking about J-Lo, and then we are done because we have passed time. Okay, this one's specifically for you. Can you please ask Mr. Blanco what I can do? My anxiety has kept me from having a relationship. I'm a middle-aged man and still a virgin, but I get so anxious around people. Please help.
So is the anxiety caused by the opposite sex? That's my first question. Or is it like a social anxiety? Because if the question is people, then there's a difference between being anxious around women and then also just being generally anxious around people.
Yeah, so this person had said that they've never been in a romantic relationship before.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they get anxious when they're around people. So it's even harder to talk to a woman too.
Right.
There was no other context.
Okay.
Of course.
I'm gonna say this is gonna be one of those hard pills to swallow. Usually when I talk to people, I'm like, I can either come at you from a counselor's perspective and give you that, like, what do you feel? Or I can give you that coach perspective and give you that hard pill and be like, bro, come on. So this is gonna be one of those hard pills. I think it kind of sounds like a nerves thing, right? When you're around women, and if you haven't dated and if you're still a virgin, I think the first thing would be to kind of like ask yourself, where are you placing sex? Are you putting it on a pedestal? And there's some things to that. So where are you placing sex? Number one, are you putting it on a pedestal? Are you putting relationships on a pedestal? Are you putting anything on a pedestal that's kind of like making it seem out of reach for you, making it seem kind of nerve-wracking to go after? Now, there's some context that I want to say to this. I know for myself, when I was very nervous before I even started my man whore stage, I knew that I had placed sex on a pedestal, hands down. I knew it right off the bat because of my upbringing and my background. So what I did was I got on those apps and I specifically sought out sex because I knew that I put it on the pedestal. And then when I started getting comfortable with it, then it didn't become a thing. Now, in this situation, obviously, it's different because I didn't necessarily have that anxiety around the opposite sex. I think with that, one thing that I would advise is try to gain as much knowledge as you can on it through whatever party you can, through whatever outlet you can. So if you have female friends, talk to them about that awkward sexual shit with their male partners, not because you're trying to be a creep, but because you're trying to be very vulnerable with who you are and see where you can get the female perspective coming from, right? Because I think one thing that really throws us off completely when we look at women, when men look at women, they automatically assume that, oh, you think this way because of this. When, surprise, surprise, men don't know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to women's thoughts, right? Like, we just don't. Yeah. We have to ask them, we have to know where they're coming from. And once we actually start to get that idea from numerous parties, okay, get that knowledge, think about it, okay? Also, read books on some shit, listen to podcasts, like actually get some knowledge from real life situations. not fiction, not movies, not Disney movies, not those fairy tales that exist that will only give you the shit that isn't real. Obtain that, like, be real about it, and use that and baby step that shit, right? Like, if you're feeling anxious with it, then don't force yourself to hurry up. Like, gather the knowledge, ask those females in your life, even try it again, therapy or a coach, to ask their perspective on it. Probably even try to get the opposite sex therapist, female therapist, female coach, get their perspective on it, and kind of just really open up your doors when it comes to what you automatically right now currently think. Because if you're thinking XYZ, maybe it's only because you've only ever known XYZ and you haven't been exposed to every other letter of the alphabet. So probably start with that. Get all of that knowledge, get all of that information, again, from real sources, and check yourself to see whether you're putting sex on a pedestal, to see whether you're putting dating on a pedestal. And if it comes to an anxiety thing, whether it's a social anxiety or like the opposite sex anxiety, again, professional help, therapist, coach, work through that. But if it's kind of like a dating thing, one thing that a lot of people don't like, I view it as kind of helpful, again, just because I'm me, exposure therapy. So put yourself in those situations where you are dating. Go to a bar, talk to people, talk to women, go to a club, talk to women. Sure, you might get shot down. There's a guarantee you'll probably get shot down, but that's okay because that's part of the experience, right? There's only, like, I've had this conversation with numerous people, but specifically one friend who's told me that she is, and this is a female who's telling me, she doesn't like rejection. She doesn't like, going after somebody and them shooting her down because it's too much pain, it's too much heartbreak, it's too much XYZ. And she's gay. So it's like her pool is not that large, right? My pool is a lot larger. But in the same sense, I've told her the only way that I can do what I can do now in terms of talking to women, in terms of coming up to them, having no problem and engaging in a conversation, is, aside from all of the stuff that I know about people, blah, 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 in the very, very, very beginning of me doing this, there was nothing but rejection left and right, because you get used to it. Because it becomes something that, okay, now you know how to sidestep. Now you know what to work with. And it's just experience. That's a lot. That's a really long answer, but I think it's helpful because, one, you need to know where you're coming from. You need to know what those blocks are. And you need to be able and willing to get that information and probably get it from women, because if that's what's stopping you, you need to know and understand from their perspective where they're coming from. Don't ask men, because if you're trying to date a woman, why are you going to ask a guy for any advice? Unless the guy's a relationship coach. Awesome. Still ask women, still seek them out, and they'll help you. Don't be a creep about it, but they'll help you if you're their friend and they're your friend, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I think that was a great answer. I didn't think it was long at all. Extremely helpful. I want to just highlight one of the points that you made, where it really comes from not feeling worthy enough and not believing in themselves that they can do something like this. And really, like, putting whatever it is that they're afraid of on a pedestal. When you were saying that reminds me of 40-year-old virgin. Like, you're putting the pussy on the pedestal. But it's true, like, making it bigger than what it really is. It's not, there's so many things in life that are way more important than this thing. However, I mean, they've gotten this far without interacting in this way. So it's not like they're going to die if it doesn't happen. But there is a level of there's a lack of self-awareness, lack of self-worth and value, and thinking that they would have anything of value to bring to those interactions or to those connections. And that's definitely something that they would have to work on with a coach or a therapist, because without the context, we don't know where this stemmed from or where they got it from, and how to really let go of these things. But I really like what you said about exposure therapy too. I heard someone earlier say the cure to all things is action. There's no other way to, I don't want to say it's the cure to all things, but when you're afraid of doing something, the only way to not be afraid of it anymore is to fucking do it. That's it. You just have to do it. There's no way around it.
Yeah, I know, and I just want to give a real life example for this individual. I have a friend who he just started dating, and I don't want to call him awkward because that would be disrespectful. But it's not something that he's used to, right? And he is definitely one of those individuals that it takes some time for him to like open up to getting into this dating phase. And I have seen personally the difference in him, in his responses to women, in his thoughts about women, in his thoughts about himself, more importantly, and his ability and willingness to open up and continue to go on these dates and continue to like bring a lot of his standards down, because they're pretty fucking high, and put himself in those situations where, you know what, it may not be your wife, it may not even be a lady who's going to have sex with you, and that's fine. That's not the point. The point is to be able to talk to them, to get comfortable with yourself, so you can continue to build those skills, continue to build that fearlessness within you, that confidence within you, to just take that. Because guess what? You are going to get rejected. I'm telling you this from my perspective. I get rejected. Well, I still get rejected. Okay. And the reason why I pause there is because I kind of put a halt on the dating for right now. But even during my little dating thing, this year, I've still gotten rejected left and right. There's no shame about it. Women and men get rejected, period. Men more often, and that's fine because that's the world that we live in. No, probably not. Okay. But it's just a part of it. And the thing is, you'll never really get to know who you really are if you don't put yourself in that scenario. It's a shitty scenario to be in, but it becomes less and less shitty, and you get that thicker skin over time.
Yeah. That was great. That's a great example. That really drove it home. So the last thing is about J-Lo going through this breakup, things like that. The reason why it's important to me is because where do I want to start? I really admire her as another businesswoman. Like, she has really transformed herself into a brand and into a really different person when it comes to professionalism and business. And she's a Latina too, so it's just a really big deal to me. I don't make a big deal about her body or things like that because she is doing the work. If you do the work, you could have a body like that too. If you had so much money and so many of those same resources, I don't doubt that more people would be able to have bodies like that. It is a part of her business and her brand. But the reason why I wanted to talk about J-Lo is that I don't just admire her as a businesswoman, but also like a person that becomes extremely vulnerable publicly when it comes to relationships. Like she really puts herself out there. And she's really putting the relationship out there. I'm not sure if she's doing that on purpose because people are going to find out anyway, which I don't believe that to be true. If you want to keep something private, there's ways of doing that. But I really like how she is able to do that with making herself vulnerable and open to sharing her journey about her romantic life. And there's a lot of just kind of like trial and error, and also to showing that like, look, I can be with one of the most famous people in the world, Mark Anthony, right? And then leave that situation and be with someone else. And then leave that situation and then be with someone else. And this is not, I don't know if she's devastated. I don't know how nobody really knows that, right? Only she knows that. But just the tenacity, the perseverance of like continuing to be open to loving, to be open to want to find that match for herself, to be open to discovering if this person is going to be my person. I just really admire that. I really think that's really fucking rare and special. I'm not speaking to like her, musical talent or skills or anything like that. I think she's a phenomenal dancer. But what I did want to highlight, regardless of whatever is going on with like the benefit and all of that stuff, I wanted to highlight how she continues to make herself vulnerable and putting herself out there to connect with someone on a deeper level and see if it can go in that route. Or let me not say on a deeper level, because I don't know how she's connecting with these people. But I do like the fact how she just continues to keep trying. She doesn't give up. And even if she decides to be by herself for a while, that doesn't say that she's giving up. I just like how she continues to be vulnerable with her journey. I really wanted to put this out there instead of what's out there right now about like cheating and scandal and things like that. I really wanted to highlight vulnerability even at like a celebrity status. And now that doesn't escape anyone. Like anyone is capable of being vulnerable, and anyone is capable of getting their heart broken. Anyone is capable of being rejected. Anyone is capable of having these experiences come to their life and then having to figure out what to do afterwards. This is not, this is a human experience, right? This is about the human experience and how we're choosing to connect. I don't know how she's choosing to connect with people. And if she wants to connect in a different way and in a deeper way, maybe she should hire me as her coach. But yeah, I really wanted to just highlight her ability to be vulnerable with her relationships and continuing on even when they don't work out in her favor. That's all I wanted to say about that.
I would say, so anybody who knows me knows that I definitely have no idea what's going on in like the media world at all. So what I will say is, whether it's J-Lo or the person that is your neighbor who you have no idea and the world doesn't know them, vulnerability takes strength, period. And whether it's you putting it out there or not, or you keeping it a secret and working on your shit. It takes strength to be vulnerable. It takes strength to know where your weaknesses are, know where your shortcomings are, and to continue putting yourself in the position where you're like, okay, I don't want to get hurt, but I also know that not wanting to get hurt is not really realistic, because in life there is suffering, and it is the avoidance of suffering that causes suffering.
Mm.
Buddhist perspective.
Yes,
So
so true.
I think, again, whoever you are, vulnerability is, I look at it as being synonymous with strengths. Because you definitely have individuals who are not going to be vulnerable or show their vulnerability because they don't want others to see that. They want to remain in this spotlight and to have this perspective of themselves be consistently put out into the public. Again, whether you're famous or not. But when you become vulnerable, when you put yourself out there, you reach people, you connect with them, even with no words being said, you connect with them, and they can experience their life and what they're experiencing, look at your experiences and say, oh, fuck, yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I'm feeling that. No, that really does suck. I kind of get that, because you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. So granted, I may not know much about that situation whatsoever. But in terms of her, like you said, continuing to put herself out there, again, it takes vulnerability, and vulnerability, usually for me at least, it definitely aligns with strength. So
yeah, I agree. Good stuff, man. Today went by so quickly. That's all the time we have for today. That's already been an hour and a half. Please don't forget, I have a singles group open for people that are ready for love. If you are a single person and you are ready for love, done with drama, please DM me or send me an email, lupitavcoaching@gmail. You can find me Lupita V Coaching anywhere if you're interested in that singles group. If you want to learn how to align with romantic love through your own healing, Mr. Blanco and I have a workshop coming up June 6th through Guias. If you're interested, please leave a comment below or find us anywhere on social media to get tickets for that workshop. And do you have any last words you want to share?
No, not necessarily. Again, with where we're both at, obviously they can find you on your handle at or I guess on Instagram, and they can find me through you, Lupita V Coaching, right? Also House Arrest, your DJ handle.
Yeah.
Mr. Blanco 1 on Instagram. My Gmail that I gave out earlier, Mr. Blanco 001 at Gmail. And yeah, hit up the workshop, because I think with the workshop, what's going to be a little bit different about that is we have some special VIP stuff going on that it's one of those things where like if you had a coach, or if you had a therapist, or if you had somebody to like be right in your face and talk to you about some shit that you may not like but you need to hear, that's going to be one of those things that's going to be offered for that. So hit that up, take advantage of that. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to DM, feel free to message, feel free to email, and let's just connect. Really, that's kind of what it boils down to, right? Is just connecting and continuing on this path for ourselves. So
yeah, good stuff. Yeah. The VIP stuff will definitely be transformative. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate you. I hope that the meditation earlier in this video brings you some light and some peace. I will let you guys go, sending you love, lights, and much, much abundance and happiness. And always remember, you have always, always, always been enough. You're so worth it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.